because he said it in the interview, because I heard he told this to members of Congress over the last 48 hours, is that he felt that there's been a real shift, that it's not only words, and that Donald Trump was more open than ever to provide weapon systems, long-range weapon systems, that until today he refused to provide.
That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it happens.
Of course. I do want to see what happens, and we will get a new wrinkle in this come tomorrow. I want to ask you about your reporting on Israel and Gaza, because Netanyahu is on his way to New York, scheduled to speak before the General Assembly. That's tomorrow, and then he's going to be heading to the White House after that. What are you hearing about this 21-point peace plan that Steve Witkoff presented to Arab leaders this week?
So I think what is interesting in this plan is that it's Donald Trump's plan. It's not Bibi Netanyahu's plan. Because I have to say that even me, I was kind of thinking maybe it's just the Bibi plan disguised.
Yeah, put like a different header put on it.
Yeah, but it is not.
Okay.
It is not. This is a plan that has been drafted over the last 2 weeks after many months of pre-work. Yeah. It was drafted by Witkoff, by Jared Kushner, with inputs from Arab countries, with inputs from former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. The Israelis, before Trump presented it to the Arabs, the Israelis already knew the broad contours of this plan, but it does not mean that it's a Bibi plan. It's a Donald Trump plan, and Bibi Netanyahu, when he arrives at the White House on Monday, he will definitely try and improve the language and change some of the things in the plan, add things that he wants in the plan that are not there now, take out some stuff. Obviously, now it's a negotiation. But there's something, I think, more profound here. And you have to look how Netanyahu will land in New York in like 2 hours, but you have to look at the route his plane took to get here.
Yeah, it's wild. How do you, I mean, you describe it, please.
Yes, he did not fly over any European country. He went only above the Mediterranean Sea. And the reason for it is that either countries in Europe don't want to allow his plane to go through their airspace. Other countries, he's concerned that if something happens to the plane, needs to land, he will be arrested because of the International Criminal Court arrest warrants. In other countries, they're total disconnect, so they don't even want to ask permission to go through the airspace. That tells you a lot. Netanyahu has to, I think, he understands more and more how isolated Israel is under his leadership and how isolated he is personally. I don't think that there's ever been a case of an Israeli prime minister in Israel's history who is that isolated, who is seen as such a pariah coming to the United States, to the UN General Assembly. I'm covering this thing for 20 years.
Yeah.
I never thought I would see this.
Yeah, I mean, the visit to the White House on Monday is going to be very different. This fourth visit, if you will, but still very different and singular in the environment that he's looking at now. It's really good to see you. Thank you so always for bringing your reporting. Thank you. John.
All right, first big ratings, now new jokes. What Jimmy Kimmel did overnight with his huge new platform.
The CNN original series.
You know, whenever it comes to seeing all the distress in the world right now pertaining to President Yahoo over in Jerusalem, it just goes to show you the seriousness of what's happening in the third world countries pertaining to the Middle East, of him feeling so uncomfortable that he refuses to even fly over some of their airspace, knowing good and well that if he did have airplane problems and had to land, that they would probably immediately arrest him. It just goes to show you the tension, how that it has builded in a negative way against President Yahoo, in correspondence with seeing the humanitarian crisis that has erupted. And once more, whenever you're dealing with a society that is upside down, that can't see the trees for the forest, And they're blaming Israel for this versus blaming Hamas for this. It just goes to show you how far out in left field that not only the American politics are, but also in response to all this stuff. You know, it's really sickening to think that we live in the 21st century. This is the year 2025. We've been in this century now for 25 years. It's really sickening to think that those people over there are still being ruled under the old Persian Empire mindset that goes way back, even further back than the Muslim Accords or some of the other people that's brought into existence pertaining to Moses' laws of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's really sad that those people, even to this day, still has not evolved, still refuses to evolve, still are practicing the same barbaric, heathenistic, cruel, insensitive acts that they've been doing upon to one another now for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And of course, it talks about hatred in the Bible, in the first part of Revelations, how that God hates those that worship under the pretense of Balak and Balaam. And Saudi Arabia is the world's worst. To think that we, especially in New York City, funding that particular meeting this year, to think that money has exceeded over true justice, I'm appalled by it. I'm appalled by it because whenever our Congress done what they done pertaining to 9/11, pertaining to the Arab people over there in Saudi Arabia, they sold us out. They flat-footed sold us out to the degree that now money is more important than human lives, or money is more important than true justice. Now, over here in America, we do monitor people's lives off of money to a certain degree. That if you become disabled, what exactly is the state going to require for you to be paid off pertaining to your disability? But something has happened to the American stance whenever we come to using that same standard for war tactics. I don't understand it. It's sickening to see what's going on right now. And to be quite honest with you, I kind of like Donald Trump in his stance towards hating his enemies or hating his rivals or hating those that have caused so much problems.
Storm reached southern China. It toppled trees there, smashed shop windows in China's tech hub of Shenzhen. The area is among the most densely populated coastlines in all of the world. And in Hong Kong, hurricane-force winds ripping through the city, injuring at least 90 people. The fierce winds whipped up waves that swamped waterfront areas, damaging buildings and restaurants there. At its peak, the typhoon was the most powerful storm in the world yet this year. John?
Right, this morning, for the first time since his high-profile trial, Sean Combs due back in a New York courtroom. Pre-sentencing motions set to get underway very shortly. The jury convicted Combs earlier this year on 2 prostitution-related charges, with sentencing set for next week. Ahead of that, attorneys for Combs argued that he should receive a sentence of no more than 14 months. A new expansion of a recall for potentially radioactive shrimp. Now it includes frozen shrimp sold at Kroger stores in 31 states. The FDA says tens of thousands of bags may have been contaminated with cesium-137. With repeated low-dose exposure, cesium can lead to an elevated risk of cancer. The FDA has a full list of the affected products on its website. A new voice for the subway system here in New York City, Cardi B.
These trains don't move without you, so make sure you pay that fare and keep it real. Stop subway surfing. Ride safe, keep keep it cute and keep it moving.
The Bronx native partnered with the MTA after selling her new album on its subway cars. No word yet on when the messages will begin airing across the system, but the audio is generally so sketchy on the subways, chances are you won't be able to make it out anyway. Yeah, you could do that maybe, but it would sound like... That's what it would sound like.
All right, thank you, John. This morning, the numbers are in, and Jimmy Kimmel Live shattered records Tuesday with 6.3 million viewers tuning in for the return to late night. That's 3 times, by the way, the show's typical numbers. Chief data correspondent Harry Enton has looked into how Americans are feeling about free speech these days. Of course, Kimmel, his whole monologue, his whole show was about free speech. He said, look, it's not about my show. It's about the ability to speak your mind and not be punished for it. What are you seeing in the numbers?
Yeah, I would say that Americans are freaked out, Sarah. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. Optimistic that the U.S. will protect free speech. Back in January, it was 57% who said yes, 38% were pessimistic, saying no. Look where we are in September, though. The percentage that said they were optimistic has plummeted now. Just 43% of Americans are optimistic that the U.S. will protect free speech. The majority, 53%, say no. They are, in fact, pessimistic that America would protect free speech. And of course, free speech, it's right there in the Bill of Rights. And yet Americans are very much fearful that the U.S. will not be able to protect it going forward.
This is actually, it's really disturbing.
Yeah.
And then consider that everybody has the chance to sort of broadcast their ideas with the new technologies,
Yes.
with the social media. So it's fascinating there. What is driving this decline, you think?
Yeah, what is driving this decline? You might think, oh, it's Democrats who are freaked out, right? Oh, my goodness, Trump, infringing on the rights of free speech, and Democrats are sort of wet in bed. No, it's actually independents. It's independents where the movement has been. Optimistic that the U.S. will protect free speech among independents. It was 59% in January. Look at this decline, down to 36% now. Just 36% of independents are optimistic that the U.S. will protect free speech. The majority of Democrats match that as well. They are pessimistic. Republicans have seen a little bit of decline, but with Trump in the White House, I don't think it's too surprising that the majority of Republicans are still optimistic that the U.S. would protect free speech. But independents really driving this. They are no longer optimistic.
That's saying something. Just quickly here. Are Americans even comfortable talking amongst themselves, to their families, to their friends about these polarizing issues?
Yeah, I would just say this. I mean, look at this. Political chats with those you know. Talk about your differences. Only 49% of Americans feel comfortable talking about differences with those that they know. 47% avoid talking about politics with those that they know. But guys, I feel comfortable talking about pretty much anything with you.
Yeah, that may be true.
Very evident.
But we have to shut you up right now, so don't talk about anything else.
The show is over. Zip
We're
it.
going. I don't know what he's doing. We're going. Thanks for joining us.
Situation up.
You've heard me mention before pertaining to the violations that's happened in my particular life going back into 1989 whenever I was speaking on a radio station and basically being forced to abandon that in which what I had compassionately felt about putting out to the general public at that time, especially to the churches at that time. But there's a whole lot more to my violations other than 1989. There's also the violations of what happened in Madison County whenever Homeland Security, Secret Service intervened in getting Madison County police to charge me with a deadly weapon, even though they took about 30 minutes, 2 officers in prying and taking screwdrivers and stuff, and finally getting a sword showcase box open. That was a total violation of Christianity rights towards separation of church and state. It would have been different if the sword would have been outside of the showcase box. It would have been different if I was swinging the sword and trying to harm people with the sword. And the thing about the sword, this is the joke that's really a sick joke. The sword was made out of aluminum, and it was to be used on something like Sinbad and the Sailors, but I still got charged with a deadly weapon. I'm talking about something that you would use in a playwright on stage. but I still got charged with a deadly weapon. What was they trying to do? They was trying to stifle me. They was trying to stop me. They didn't want me to pursue in this quest, even though it was 9 cassette tapes that wound up on the desk of Ronald Reagan's administration in the latter part of his presidency that not only convinced Ronald Reagan, but convinced all the other superpowers regarding the world not going to end by a nuclear holocaust, but rather it was going to end the way that the Bible had predicted for it to end. Throughout the 30 plus years that I have stood, sat down, basically playing dead man's bluff at times, not knowing what was going to occur in my life, I couldn't tell you the amount of times pertaining to a pattern that basically surrounds freedom of speech. And of course, whenever they done what they done to me up here in Martin, Tennessee, in Weakley County, Tennessee, in charging me with falsifying files, is once more proof that they wanted to stifle me, that they wanted to bring some sort of punishment to me, as if I was some sort of a could-be, would-be homegrown terrorist, somebody that was making threats to them. And the thing about what I've been teaching and preaching, though it may have a threatening content to it, they were still trying to drive me or provoke me off into being a threatful person. That way, a judge and a doctor could have got together and said, well, we deem this person a danger to himself or a danger to society. Let's get him out of open population. Let's put him away for life. That's what the whole content of this has been, pertaining to the Jubilees Windmill Ministries that recently got changed to Jesus Christ Jubilees Windmill Ministries missions. The proof is in the pudding in what has occurred here, not only towards what had occurred in Kentucky, but also in what had occurred in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, whenever I was asking too many questions about the Oklahoma bombing, and all of a sudden they was going to make an example out of me by planting a bomb in the back of my truck and activating it towards trying to promote me as me being a threat to society. There has been an ongoing pattern that wanted to stifle me and put me away and shut me up. And whenever I say an ongoing, I'm talking about at least probably at least 7 or 8, maybe even 10 different incidences towards them wanting to ban me or discard me or ignore me or entrap me or just shut me up, period. All based around the anointing that the Father had placed upon my life whenever I met 13 men over here in Martin, Tennessee, darkly complected men pretending to them being Arabic descent from over in Saudi Arabia that tried to actually take my life, but was unsuccessful in doing so. Tried to take my life, but wound up placing a black piece of cloth in my shirt pocket that was in the symbol of a moose head star, 5-pointed satanic star, that he wound up getting close enough to me that he put that into my shirt pocket at that time. Me not knowing the end results of that particular episode that happened in my life in 1988, they hung around long enough to establish a nickname for this evil demonic being that I'd heard about in the early 70s that had these remarkable powers towards being the Magic Man. Even to this day, the Magic Man is still out in front view, even though not only our political leaders know about, but our spiritual leaders know about, and there is still no movement in the name of the Windmill Ministries missions? Proof is in the pudding that these people never did want any type of revival. They never did want any type of reform. They never did want any type of revolution. They never did want any type of true peace or utopia, because as many hours that I have sat endlessly and talked like I'm talking right now in behind the camera and using other illustrations on TV to be able to prove my case pertaining to all this commotion now about freedom of speech, I still don't get a movement. So whatever happens to the American people and the world, they have no one to blame other than those that could have supported this ministry, or those that deliberately intervene in wanting to stop this ministry. They have them to blame, not Dennis James Jackson, known as Juby Jackson. They have no one else to blame pertaining to all the death and the misery and the sorrow, all the gun violence, all the suicides, all the drug overdoses, all the other problems that we have witnessed just within the past few years. And it's basically went into a complete different elevation since not only 9/11, 9/11 put it into a different perspective, but since COVID has hit, it's actually went into another level of seriousness. And I don't know where it's going to end or if it's going to end.
Motive. We saw those shell casings with the anti-ICE messages, and we saw the monstrous actions of this individual targeting our ICE law enforcement. This has to stop. The political violence in this country must come to an end before there's further bloodshed.
This shooting is among at least 4 attacks on threats on ICE or Border Patrol, for that matter, at locations in Texas this year. Also new this morning, President Trump is now demanding an investigation into what he's calling, quote, triple sabotage during his visit to the United Nations this week. The president posting to social media, noting, and I'm quoting him now, not 1, not 2, but 3 sinister events. The events he's referencing are a series of technical mishaps, including a stopped escalator and broken teleprompter as he addressed the United Nations General Assembly. Let's go live right now to CNN's senior White House reporter, Betsy Klein. Betsy, what are you learning?
Well, these may seem like petty grievances by President Donald Trump, but it really underscores his broader complaints about the United Nations and its capacity to solve some of the world's most intractable conflicts. We've seen President Trump reimagine the role of the U.S. in the world and its alliances. And earlier this week, as he addressed the United Nations, he questioned the role of that body. What is its purpose? He said that very often they send strongly worded letters, but there's not much follow-up. And more than 24 hours after that speech, the technical difficulties still top of the president's mind. He wrote and laid all of them out in a very lengthy post to social media that read in part, quote, first, the escalator. It's amazing that Melania and I didn't fall forward onto the sharp edges of these steel steps face first. This was absolutely sabotage, he says, pointing to a story in Monday's London Times that said the UN workers had joked about turning off that escalator. And he says, as I stood before a television crowd of millions of people all over the world and important leaders in the hall, my teleprompter didn't work. It was stone cold dark. I was told that the sound was completely off in the auditorium where the speech was made, that world leaders couldn't hear a thing. The president going on to say this wasn't a coincidence. This was triple sabotage at the UN. The president then demanding a complete investigation. He says that the Secret Service is involved. And we've heard from the United Nations seeking to show the Trump administration they're taking this seriously. They say there will be an internal investigation and the results will be transparent, Wolf.
All right, Betsy Klein over at the White House for us. Thank you very much.
And I couldn't agree any more pertaining to what went on. And of course, during that event was whenever they raided an outfit that was using highly sophisticated technology in jamming forces in being able to basically attack pertaining to electronical digital warfare, that I actually questioned rather not all that was going on in New York City during the time of the excavator quit working, during the time that the teleprompter quit being used. And also there was another event where another speaker, a very important speaker, was speaking, and once more couldn't nobody hear nothing that he was saying. You had all these electrical disturbances happening all at the same time, regardless whether it was in the form of electrical, as far as actual electricity that runs the excavator, or electrical disturbances regarding in the digital form pertaining to how things operate and how things run, etc., etc., etc. But yet now, I got punished once again towards wanting to try to stifle me, wanting to shut me up whenever I put forth the advisory or the warning in 2007 up in western Kentucky that God had showed me that there was going to be massive electrical disturbances. You know, if you get to looking at our digital era that we live in today, we depend upon so many different frequencies. We depend upon so many different forms of electricity, regardless whether it's being formed by the turbines that move water, or the turbines that move air, or other types of energy being formed. This whole planet right now is basically a centrifuge that is just at the brink of popping or going off. And whenever it does, whenever it talks about in the Bible that God will destroy the world the second time by using fire and brimstone, we're at that brink of doing just exactly that electronically, much less what the damages that we're doing to the planet Earth pertaining to draining all the oil out of the ground that was put there for a heat shield and was put there to reduce the friction whenever the platelets go to moving back and forth, up and down, full moon, half moon, high tide, low tide. The world is in constant motion pertaining to that in which what's underneath our feet. Even though we may not think it is in constant motion, just like the oceans that's constantly going up and down, based around the attraction of the moon pertaining to the gravitational pull, not counting all the other electronical devices that now has invaded our planet. You know, it started out with wiring as far as sending out messages to one place to another, and then they advanced that to radio and TV, and now we've got satellites, and now we've got the internet with these big cables that goes down into the oceans, and now we've got free wave ability pertaining to our phones to be able to, our GPSs to be able to work directly through the satellites above our heads, and we have evolved on an electronical scale, a digital electronical scale, regardless whether it's AC current, DC current, or digital current. We have evolved in the past 100 years, and I'm really surprised that the world hadn't already done ceased to exist, or done been turned into nothing but hell, fire, and brimstone because of all these microwaves going through the air. No wonder we're all getting cancer. No wonder all the bees are dying. No wonder certain things are happening that's unproportionally different in the aspect of what's going on today versus 100 years ago. I mean, I can remember me being 64 years old whenever they didn't even have the microwave. I was in the existence of seeing the microwave come into existences. It was a big, heavy thing, very costly. If you got one for $400 or $500, you was lucky back then. Of course, I can remember back whenever the first telephone come out, that had a black box that looked like a regular hand telephone, a landline telephone, that basically you had to carry around in your automobile. Those was all the beginning stages of where we are today. We're evolving. We're evolving in technology and in all this electronical, digital advancements, but we're not evolving whenever it comes to knowledge. We're not evolving whenever it comes to interpreting the Bible correctly. We're not evolving whenever it comes to understanding the teachings of Christ, that wasn't just a requirement in telling us that we had to believe in him, but in how that he expected for us to live by his requirements. Jesus did not contradict none of the teachings that come originally from Moses pertaining to the Ten Commandments. He did not violate none of those things. He supported those things. That's the reason why Jesus said what he said, that he did not come to do away with the law, but rather than to fulfill the law pertaining to the mercy, the grace. But now society has used and abused that to the degree that now we're seeing massive electrical disturbances that are only going to get worse. And whenever it comes to trial and error, my friends, it's time to put an end to the trial and error, because it is costing human beings' lives all over the planet, pertaining to all the death and destruction and misery that's happening to us.
A bold new message from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Russia.
It's
where their bomb shelters are. If they will not stop the war, they will need it.
The CNN.
Now the war is intensifying over in Ukraine. Now President Yahoo over in Israel is scared to fly over any land masses. This thing is intensifying and getting worse and not better. I've seen it go from a mild, mediocre event of Ronald Reagan trying to convince the superpowers that the world wasn't going to be destroyed by humanity, to Desert Storm, to Desert Shield, which was all inappropriate because there was no bombs of mass destruction pertaining to Saddam Hussein, to 9/11, to the other wars that was going on that America was either funding or backing, as well as seeing other countries, including Saudi Arabia, that was just basically pillaging or killing those that was around them that they was against, to 9/11, to or before 9/11 pertaining to Ruby Ridge and what went on in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, towards what went on in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to 9/11, to the pandemic. I have seen us go from a mediocre, moderate stage of danger to right now we're at the highest level of danger from a world perspective on every level. Not just on a political level, but on every level of seeing death and destruction like we could never, ever begin to imagine because of the stupidity of what humanity has been leading us all off into. And once more, I still don't see a movement. Once more, I still don't see people supporting the Windmill Ministries missions. I hear them talking about peace. I can understand, in essence, in certain things that they're doing in trying to bring solutions to some of the problems, but I still don't see the core problem being attacked pertaining to the spirituality of all this. And it won't. It will only get worser and worser and worser. And I tend to wonder that right here, in less than an arm's throwing distance of a rock, of where I live, right here in northwest Tennessee in Weakley County, of where all this began, either in Weakley County or Obion County, I tend to wonder that's exactly what these people desire. That's exactly what these people want. They want bloodshed. They want chaos. They want harm and hurt. They want people's lives to be turned upside down. They want the poor to become even poorer. They want the rich to become even richer towards it being unfair and unbalanced. This is what they want. They're getting exactly what they wanted. And if they didn't play this off in a direct way, they played it off in an indirect way. And because I can validate that today, in the year 2025, this is September, shortly a little more than a month after my son being put in the ground September the 2nd, I can see how things is escalating, especially when we done what we done pertaining to the Afghanistan war after 10 years of spending over $2 trillion, or right around $2 trillion, and leaving billions of dollars worth of equipment over there and walking away from that scene the way that we did. We are in serious, serious danger right now on every perspective that you can think of. And it's really sad.
Prior offense back in 2016. The FBI says he was perched on a nearby rooftop and fired indiscriminately at the building and the vehicles on the property. One person who was in ICE custody is dead. 2 other detainees are now in critical condition. The FBI director, Kash Patel, posted these images of bullet casings found near the shooter. One bullet is inscribed, quote, anti-ICE. Joining us now is Sarah Saldana, a former director of the...
And now we're seeing more and more stuff like that towards turning it into a game or a sport. So you see the level of intensity towards the dangers that we're walking off into?
Patrol locations in Texas this year alone. Are you worried this violence is escalating?
Of course, and thank you for having me. It is very disturbing. Law enforcement, and particularly with respect to ICE, the Homeland Security agents and the removal officers, have always been subject to scorn and dislike.
Ridicule,
I know a little bit about that myself. I could not make either side happy, either the left or the right.
Ridicule.
It's a very controversial subject, but I've never seen anything of this ilk before. Certainly not while I was the director of ICE, and since then it's just escalated further and further. I'm very concerned for the safety of these law enforcement officers.
Yeah, we all are very concerned. The FBI director, Sarah Kash Patel, says a bullet recovered from the scene was inscribed with the words anti-ICE. Investigators are still searching for a motive, but what does that tell you potentially about the investigation?
Well, it certainly says that it may point to motive, but I would not jump to any conclusions just yet. And I'll tell you, just my experience, and I'm sure the experience of most of your viewership, is that there is no explaining disturbed people who believe that guns will solve their concerns or resolve a political question. Getting into the mind of these folks is very difficult. I doubt that they're activists in their own, if they have a party even, or they're just disturbed people. And that's the problem with the ramped up rhetoric, is you don't know who your audience is.
That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. The other problem is pertaining to law enforcement that's not doing their jobs, pertaining to derelict of duty.
President Trump almost immediately blamed what he called radical left Democrats, and Vice President J.D. Vance declared it politically motivated. What does that say about today's political climate?
Well, it speaks to the failure of our leadership.
There you go.
Particularly in the administration and in both houses of Congress.
There you go.
To really address the true problem here. Immigration is such a hot button issue, and we have nobody really coming to the table in good faith and saying we need to resolve some of these issues that are rankling the American public, either one way or the other. And it's horrific to turn at a time like this to a political and partisan rhetoric. I think Ted Cruz was took to the podium at the Dallas Police Department press conference and talked about how harsh words can lead to tragic consequences, but then proceeded just to highlight those that were actions taken against people on the right. This is not a partisan issue. This is a very important bipartisan matter, and whether it's Nancy Pelosi's husband or the congressperson in Minnesota, we should be at a podium together, not just one side or the other. But I would love to see two senators take to the podium and say this has got to stop.
Certainly does. Today, federal authorities are tightening security at immigration facilities all around the country. Given how huge and widespread President Trump's immigration operation is right now, how challenging is that new mission?
Well, it is very challenging. You could try to speak to those people on the inside trying to carry out the work as has been defined. And of course, that is one of the ironies here is, for example, in this instance, this gunman turning their attention randomly to the people at this ICE facility when it's not the removal officers or the staff in that building who are shaping policy, it's the administration. And
right.
So I would suggest
right.
that we do our best to try to ramp down that conversation. The mission of ICE should be defined. It has an extraordinary national security and public safety mission. The women and men who are there are dedicated to their mission. And you know, there's something so ironic here. Both the immigrants who are turning up at our border, who are seeking asylum or turning to this country for help, are doing so because they want to feed their families and have a living wage. The women and men at ICE are doing the same thing. They have a job to do. It is defined by the administration, and they are doing their best to make their own living. There's so many parallels between the two groups. To me, it truly turns up the irony in what is going on right now.
Danger.
The former ICE director during the Obama administration, Sarah Saldana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Danger, Will Rogers. Danger, danger, danger. You know, don't nobody want enforcement pertaining to local enforcement, state enforcement, or federal enforcement to be snooping down their throats and eavesdropping and basically monitoring or mandating how people are going to live versus how they're not going to live. We have seen that through the mask pertaining to COVID. Even though it was as clear as a knot on a log, as my grandfather used to always say, that people wearing masks during the outbreak of a pandemic was the smart and wisest thing to do. You've still seen people fighting on airplane flights pertaining to wearing masks and not spreading germs from one person to another. We went through toilet paper shortages. We've gone through baby formula shortages. We've gone through other types of things. And it's just endless in how that not just the American people, but the world in general is being attacked right now pertaining to these evil demonic forces that I continue to keep telling people about that the Bible has already done predicted that these occurrences was going to increase because Satan knows that his time is short and that he's working double time or triple time right now in trying to bring that much more death and destruction and misery into all of our lives. As I said a while ago, nobody wants the judgmental side of authority to be snooping down their throats. But at the same time, whenever we feel like that we're violated, or whenever we are violated, regardless of what it may be, we make a telephone call and we expect for the law to be there pronto. We expect for them to be there to assist us during our emergency, correct? Based around safety and security, correct? It's just the same scenario that went on with me and my brother for 3 consecutive solid years, pretending to be under the administration of Mike Wilson. The sheriff's department, because we live out in the county, ordinarily was doing their jobs according to what that they were supposed to have been doing. It was the administration up in the courthouse that was not doing their jobs pertaining to dereliction, that allowed for this situation to grow and grow and grow for 3 consecutive solid years that I can prove. Any attorney can get on their little special little platform and they can go in and they can see things pertaining to the incident reports that the sheriff's department congregated up for 3 consecutive years up until my brother died, of seeing how many times that we called upon the sheriff's department to come out here at the same address, either 430 Beach Grove Road or 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. Every one of the incidences was happening right here, coming to us. But we still couldn't get the judicial Justice Department in the state of Tennessee to do nothing about it. In other words, we was on our own. We was on our own, and they could have cared less towards what was going on either at 430 Beach Grove Road or 291 Thompson Road. They could have cared less. So if they care less about somebody that was trying to warn them pertaining to electrical disturbances, if they could care less about somebody that was trying to warn them or give out advisories towards a bloody road ahead, if they could care less about somebody that was willing to roll up his sleeves and go to Mount Carmel and stay for 3 days and 3 nights and do an investigation down in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, and then go up to Oklahoma and discover the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth, so help us God, pertaining to a major government cover-up, if they could care less about all those factors, do you really think that you're exempt from the same group of people acting like that they care about you? And this goes on in every county in every state. And until the administration changes with their mindset pertaining to the betterment of the good of the people, pertaining to safety, and until we see these judges and these prosecuting attorneys, these DAs, going after these people in the right format, we're going to continue to be nothing but a joke over here in America. And like I said, now they're carving things on their bullet cartridges sleeves of saying various things, kind of like what the individual done with the insurance guy that got shot in broad daylight walking down the street in New York. Where does it end? It should end by our American government owning up to the fact that what went on in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, in a group of people working for the ATF purposely setting up, entrapping the Branch Davidians the way that they did. Secondly, basically using over 200 canisters of lethal tear gas that's never supposed to be used on women and children and never supposed to be used in an enclosed building, but did, knowing good and well that they had to have some sort of candles or coal oil lamps or something to be able to have some sort of light, knowing that all that gas, once it merged down into that area, it was going to turn that thing into a towering inferno, and that's exactly what they'd done. And the mixture, what the tank was doing in driving the holes off into the building was creating a mixture of oxygen along with the gas. That way the formula would have been there. That way all it would have taken was one spark to have turned it into a towering inferno. And they got their wish by killing 70-something people right in front of live cameras, and then tried to deviate around the truth and not telling the whole truth to the American people. Just like what went on in the Oklahoma building deal pertaining to Timothy McVeigh and Nichols. There was no way humanly possible that almost 4,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate could have done that kind of damage. Yes, it left a crater. Yes, it probably would have injured, let's say, 45, 50, maybe 60 people, and maybe it would have killed maybe another 15 or 20. But it wouldn't have taken the Mariel building down from the inside out, blowing all the debris back towards the Ryder truck. This government has not come clean in telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, including 9/11. That even Donald J. Trump confessed in stating the fact of the American people still hadn't gotten down to the bottom of yet. Well, guess what? Guess what? The American people still hadn't got down to the bottom of whenever the JFK assassination happened in 1963. Down in Dallas. And another factor that a lot of people don't look at, guess who was working for Secret Service at that time whenever Donald Trump made mention about that it had to have been from Secret Service, internal affairs? Now Donald Trump is beginning to awaken towards just exactly how deep and dark and corrupt that secret society organization that was formed after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln is, regarding to basically pulling towards the masses versus pulling towards the presidential American people. And it wasn't just over being sabotaged pertaining to the excavator or their electronic equipment not working properly pertaining to the teleprompters, but it was also in the exchange towards a cover-up in regards towards who actually ordered and put out the order for the assassination of JFK. That I think was originated. They was already making a lot of waves. They was already making a lot of problems all over America to the degree that there was hate mongering all over America pertaining to JFK, the Kennedy assassination. But it wasn't until what they done, and I think I'm incorrect about 1963. 1963 was something else, I believe. It wasn't until what they done up here in Kentucky, pertaining to the land between the lakes, is whenever the final order come down towards, we want him out of here. We want this president dead. Assassinate him. And I still say the close assassination that Donald J. Trump come very, very close to in his life being taken right on live TV. It just so happens he turned his head just right, and because of it, it hit his ear versus hitting his head. And all that took place within a half of a split second. That bullet was probably already discharged out of the shooter's gun that was heading directly towards Donald J. Trump's head. Just so happens he turned his head in that split second, and it didn't hit his head, it hit his ear. Now, friends, you can't make this stuff up. You can't sit down and dialogue this in to some sort of a movement or some sort of event that you're leading the American people off into. This is being done right in front of our very eyes. And could you only imagine if you think the event that happened to Mr. Kirk, Brother Kirk, Charlie Kirk, on live TV and seeing half of his neck blowed out? Could you only imagine what it would have looked like pretending to seeing a president's head basically exploding like a watermelon right in front of your very eyes? See, even to this day, they still don't truly show all the JFK assassination. They only show up until the actual bullet hit his head. But it actually blowed half of his skull out on the backside, and you can see the particles leaving the car as this is happening, if you really want to look at it and dissect it closely. But to think that these people that works for law enforcement in the state of Tennessee has done this, and they refuse to acknowledge that they have been a part of this. Proof is in the pudding in just exactly how cowardly and how evil that these people are in thinking that they can do something like this and get away with it, or thinking that the American people ain't smart enough to catch on to what has occurred here. Something has jinxed the American people. Something has jinxed us to the degree that now all we see is bad luck. Bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. Even Donald Trump's tariffs right now are backfiring on the American people to the degree that it's helping create all these high prices. It's basically putting that many more people off into bankruptcy. That many more people are losing their homes. That many more people are basically having bad credit on account of. We are heading in the wrong direction. I continue to keep saying that again and again and again on my videos, on my data recordings. And it's as if I just as well be going out here and speaking to a tree somewhere, or talking to my dog. I just as well be talking in midair, because nobody obviously is hearing what I got to say. Because if they was, I feel like there would already be a different plan of action. But instead, they keep covering up the person that has discovered the cover-ups. One of the witnesses that is talking about all the cover-ups, that they still want to either put that individual off into a stereotype classification of him being a crackpot, or they want to continue to keep saying that he's wrong, or even my own investigator that lives here in Weakley County, up the road here, give or take about 30 miles, now is in the reference of saying, well, Dennis, you've been doing this stuff in trying to bring attention to yourself. Which absolutely offended me whenever he said that. And the reason why is because I can't help it that the Father's miracles fallen upon to my life. Who else's life am I supposed to put in place of my life by saying, oh, God performed these miracles on Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so or this person or that person? I can't use other people other than myself in acknowledging that the miracles that happened to Dennis James Jackson, that was born March 22nd, 1961. Now, you can classify that if you want to by saying, well, he's using the wrong motives in trying to glorify the kingdom of God. Or better than that, I've heard it come out of my investigator's mouth towards saying, well, you brought this upon yourself. Because he's too dim-witted or too narrow-minded to be able to see the whole picture in identifying that poor people has poor ways, and if I didn't pursue this message coming from the anointing of God the way that I did, it never would have got out there to begin with. Because I was basically having to go through the back doors of the churches in bringing forth this message rather than going through the front doors. Why is that? Why is that? Because they didn't want it to come through the front doors. They talk about the one world government. They talk about peace. They talk about the four horsemen. They talk about the two witnesses. They talk about all these other things, but that's all it is. It's talk. It's all talk. And then Donald Trump wants to get on national TV and accuse the Federation of them being a paper tiger. And if anybody's the paper tiger, I would say that it's our administration pertaining to our laws over here in America.
Dean, our special thanks to Jemana for that report. And there are new developments this morning about the war in Gaza. We're learning, for example, that the Trump administration proposed a 21-point peace plan to Arab leaders this week at the UN. Sources tell CNN the plan led to an exchange of ideas over how to agree on a final proposal. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, expressing confidence there could be, quote, some sort of breakthrough soon, but not going into detail at all. All of this happening as Israeli tanks move into a multiple neighborhood of Gaza City, with journalists in the area reporting heavy shelling and explosions. Joining us now is Kirsten Fontenrose. She was senior director for Gulf Nations.
But yet, society is so dim-witted, so dumb, they can't understand that it was Hamas that started the war, and it's Hamas that's bringing forth all this grief and destruction over in the Middle East. I've never seen society so blinded. I've never seen society so dim-witted. I've never seen society so narrow-minded as what it is right now. And you know who I blame for that? I blame the UTM Martin College, the state college up here in Martin, Tennessee, for that, because it was their professors and their teachers that knowed about the message that come from the Windmill Ministries missions that originally started out as Jesus Christ Jubilees Windmill Ministries. It was them that wanted to implement or dictate in mandating to their children that this is all in response to God's people versus the devil's people. Even the preachers wasn't preaching the right message pertaining to Satan coming down in great wrath because he knoweth his time is short. I've never seen so much blindness and deception as what I'm seeing today.
Annexation or establishing a state of Israel that they feel like is not surrounded by Palestinian enclaves. So it is a live question about whether or not the U.S. can exert that kind of influence when you have a sovereign country that believes this is an existential issue.
The French President Emmanuel Macron this week said President Trump was...
And there's another thing pertaining to Jerusalem. I mean, if you're going to cast stones, throw stones in all the directions that need to be thrown stones. Are they starting to build the third temple? Have they started? I mean, they should have already had that built by now, whenever Donald Trump first stepped out onto the scene in his first presidency pertaining to the Arab Accords. They should have already had the third temple built. He keeps talking about on Facebook, on social media, pertaining to the perfect red heifer that's going to be sacrificed during that time. So the exchange of lackness is on both parties. It's on the party of evil and it's on the party of good. Now, I'm not talking about Democrat parties. I'm not talking about Republican parties. I'm not talking about political parties. I'm talking about the party between good and evil. There is no other party. You're either on the right side or the left side. You either support the righteousness of the Holy Eternal Father that originally come down in illustrating pertaining to the commandments of God, that 7 of them was related around humanity and only 3 was related around himself, or you're against those 10 commandments. And proof is in the pudding in what I'm seeing illustrated on a day-to-day level towards people being nonchalant, stereotyping Dennis James Jackson, known as Dennis James Juby, J-U-B-B-Y, Jackson, or Juby, J-E-W-B-E-E, Brother Juby Jackson, proof is in the pudding regarding what's going on, and it's still going on. And I'm still talking about these things. I'm still bringing these things out before the open, and there's still nothing really being done.
Saying we're optimistic because we're glad the U.S. is being proactive, and frankly, this is one of the only games in town right now. And we're optimistic because we think that if the U.S. is willing to put pressure on the Netanyahu government, we have the best chance yet of seeing a plan that will take shape. And they think that things will happen fairly quickly. But there's still a lot of questions. What will the timeline for Israeli withdrawal be? What will the limits on the mandate of the international security forces be? Who will be on this oversight committee?
Exactly.
So there's still a lot to be answered. And you'll see, for instance, Erdogan, you'll see Netanyahu weighing in the meetings they have today and Monday with President Trump.
They got a big meeting coming up in the next hour over at the White House as well. Do you think Israel will be open to any of the plan's more controversial provisions, in particular the proposal for Israel to gradually withdraw from the entire Gaza Strip?
Israel continues to say that it does not want to be an occupier of Gaza or elsewhere, but you do have factions inside Israel who have political leverage, who say this is the chance to ensure that their security guarantees are finalized for eternity. So that will be quite debated. I think you're going to see two spoilers to this. You'll see parts of the Israeli government, factions on the extreme hard right, saying we're not open to anything that grants any sort of reward for October 7th. It looks like we are saying to terrorists, a good way to achieve your political aims is by attacking civilians. No one wants to grant that. But you'll also see, I expect Hamas will come back and say, we have given into pressure, we will accept this, but we will make demands that will cross some of America's red lines. For instance, we would like a seat on this oversight committee, or things that will throw these into continuing debate and put off the implementation.
Kirsten Fontenrose, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Good discussion. Appreciate it.
Once more, it was Dick Cheney that used the concept of going to war with Saddam Hussein pertaining to Desert Storm and Desert Shield to eradicate the axis of evil and to try to bring stability to that region. Until you actually implement that, until you actually demonstrate that, until you actually mandate that, you're going to continue to see evil rise up its ugly head in thinking that it can get away with whatever that it wants to do. And once more, that has been one of the Americans' number one policies, is to never negotiate with terrorists. And how come our government and other governments continue to do this is really beyond me. It's beyond me. It's appalling to think that so many men and women have died for that red, white, and blue flag right there that's on that pole. And now we are jeopardizing their sacrifices and jeopardizing the policies that they originally originated back really almost 250 years ago, whenever our people stood up in the Revolutionary War pertaining to freedom of speech. That once more, I've seen a pattern happen in my life, even going back to 1983, whenever I was attacked, and a miracle did take place in my life, and I was voicing my response to the miracle in giving God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all the glory, honor, and praise regarding to the miracle. But yet, no, I was punished because of that miracle. In other words, I was told to shut up. They went beyond that in Kenton, Tennessee, to the degree of Damian Cross, in saying, not only do we want you to shut up, but we think that you're sick, and we think that you should be marked as being a mental case, a crackpot. And that was another form to try to diminish my character in getting society to turn against me rather than society being for me. That was a way to basically attack the precious Holy Spirit pertaining to the Holy Eternal Father, pertaining to the Holy Message. Good luck to all of us. Good luck to each and every one of us regarding all these issues that has originated because of this rebellion that started right here in Northwest Tennessee, especially since 1988. Whenever we see how that things has proportionally or unproportionally gotten this far out of hand. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. And God bless the USA and our endeavors towards which way we go from this moment on. Shalom. Hallelujah. Amen.